Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you may have tuned in. Welcome to the latest installment in this Black Hat webinar series, the LOLBAS Odyssey, Tracing the Path of Finding Hidden Gems and Executables, brought to you by Black Hat, Pentera, and Informa. Terry Sweeney here with Black Hat. I'll be your moderator today. Just a few quick announcements before we get started. This webinar, of course, is designed to be interactive. We strongly encourage participation and are happy to take your questions and comments throughout the program. After today's speakers finish, they'll be answering your questions. If you've been here before, you know the drill. Type your question into that Ask a Question text box on the bottom left of the console. We'll answer as many questions as time allows. Later in the program, we'll also be asking for your feedback about the event. If you've been here before, you also know that the slides advance automatically throughout the event. A PDF copy of the presentation can also be downloaded from that resources box at the bottom of your console. We recommend you disable your pop-up blockers. If for some reason slides are advancing, please try pressing the F5 key on your keyboard to refresh your console. And if you're experiencing any other technical problems, please visit our webinar help guide by clicking on that help question-mark icon on the bottom right of this console. Let's move on to the presentation today, LOLBAS Odyssey, Tracing the Path of Finding Hidden Gems and Executables. Our presenters today are Nir Chako, Senior Security Researcher with Pentera, and Odvar Mo, Head of the official LOLBAS Open Source Project, and also with the consultancy Trusted Sec. Nir, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, thank you, Terry. So hello, everyone, and welcome again. I am very excited to be here with you today and talk a little bit about what we're doing at Pentera Labs, and specifically to share with you our LOLBAS Odyssey and the way we found and how you can find hidden gems in executables. Today will be joining me Odvar Mo as well, who is the head of the LOLBAS project, and we will have an interaction with him by the end of this session. A little bit about myself. My name is Nir Chako. I'm an electrical engineer and a former IDF Red Team leader. And since my discharge, I've been practicing as a security researcher, currently doing what I love as part of Pentera. Security researcher is basically means like, I like to break stuff and see what happens. So there will be a lot of this today. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. And of course, asking questions is cool. So like Terry said, if you have any question, please put it in the Q&A box. Now, we're going to speak a lot about LOLBAS today, but let's start with the beginning. So what is LOLBAS? So LOLBAS are basically the initials of living off the land, binaries, and scripts. So the binaries and scripts part is pretty straightforward, right? Those are tools that you can execute on a system. But what does living off the land really means? So I will suggest to you to try and imagine. Imagine yourself as a hacker gaining his initial access, his initial grip to a workstation. It might be through a minimal payload that he succeedingly delivered through a phishing campaign. It might be through an RCE vulnerability, remote code execution, where he gained himself a way of executing something that is equivalent to 2 command lines. What would he do then? From a military perspective, I would think about it like a paratrooper landing in an unknown land. What would he do then without his robust tools? So I would suggest him to try and use the things that are already around him. Maybe grab a stick or a stone from the ground as weapons. Maybe try and cover himself with leaves to try and disguise himself. And the best way to do so is by using the tools that are already around you. In the hacking world, it will be the binaries and scripts. And that's actually the meaning of living off the land. Use the things that are already around you to make the next move undetectable. Now, there are all sorts of different functionalities in the LOLBAS world. A few of them you can read right here. So I know that alternate data streams is something that Odvar really likes. Maybe he'll talk about it later on. But in this session, we will specifically put our focus on the download and execute parts. That's because we try to focus on the specific attack vector where an attacker gains his initial access, and now he needs to do something in order to get a better grip, let's say. So we will first try to download the more robust malware from his CNC server, and then he will try to execute it. And that's what we want to put our focus on. Now, LOLBAS isn't a new technique, but it's a growing trend. You can see it in almost every cyber attack campaign these days. Just two examples from this year. So in January, Quackbot malware used WScript in order to run malicious code. In an attack in February against the Security Service of Ukraine, the attackers used MSHTA, where MS is Microsoft, so it's a legitimate tool on the system, and they used it to execute malicious HTML applications, trying to stay under the radar. I have a few goals from today. The first one would be to give the red teamers and security researchers the tools and knowledge needed to find the next unknown LOLBAS. Second, I want to give the blue teamers and malware researchers the same exact tools, because as you know, in this cat and mouse game, we have to be proactive and we have to try and find something before the bad guys do. So let's try and do that. Third, I want to suggest an approach for research that contains a wide range of potential targets. Specifically in the LOLBAS landscape, I will give you the exact number later on. What does it mean to have a wide range of potential targets? Lastly, the LOL isn't so funny when it comes to bite you in the best. And what I mean by that is that I want to put an emphasis on you trying to stop the next attack. Sometimes you think that the next attack will come from this unpatched vulnerability, but we should think about it as a whole, at a full attack scenario. And as I said earlier, in the initial access, the LOLBAS tools will be the first that the attacker will try to use. So if you will stop it there, then you might save your whole organization from this cyber attack. Now, my story with LOLBAS actually starts with Pentera. In my first assignment, my team leader asked me to incorporate a new LOLBAS downloader into Pentera's platform. And I was looking around this great LOLBAS project. You can see the link here. You can try and look at it later on. So I tried to find a new LOLBAS downloader, and there are all sorts of them. But I was thinking about it being pretty interesting to find something from the Office suite, as it's not something that is native to the OS, but it's something that you can find in almost every computer. So I went on and selected Excel because it was fairly simple to use. As you can see down here below, you can execute it as a downloader just by typing Excel and the path to download the file from. So I worked on it and developed quite a bit. And then I discovered, sadly, that it won't work well with system privileges. Now, I was kind of bummed from this situation, but we're not the type of guys who gives up easily. And we thought about it and decided to try and figure out and find new LOLBAS downloader in the Office suite. In order to do that, I went and learned from the master, Odvar. So he had a great session from 2018 speaking about what they called LOLBin back in the days. And the idea was to basically find new LOLBins by listing all of the different binaries in the system and then try them one by one. And that's exactly what we did. We listed all of the binaries in the Office suite. So here you can see all of the executable files in the Office suite, and then tried them one by one. And I want to show you a quick demo of it and what it means. So you will see like the manual approach of it. So you will see in the next video, before I start it, I just want to explain. You will see here on the bottom of the screen, just want to make sure that it starts here. So on the bottom of the screen, you will have the HTTP server. That's the server that we will try to download a file from. On the top of the screen, we will have MS MSO HTMED, like Excel, and then a path to download the file from. Now, what you will see on the bottom of the screen is that we will get a HTTP GET request. And what it means that something, MSO HTMED, tried to get something out of this server. And when it tried to get something, it basically means that it tries to download something. So it was our first finding. But not only that, 2 hours into this manual one-by-one approach, we found a total of 3 new LOLBAS downloaders just by using this methodology. So it was pretty exciting at this point, just 2 hours into our work, and we already found 3 new LOLBAS downloaders. But at this point, I have a question for you guys, for the audience. So Terry, I will give you the hand.
Yeah, let's go ahead and launch our first poll. We're asking our audience here, searching for LOLBAS manually is nice and all, but how many potential files should be checked in your opinion? Got 4 options here, 50 to 150. Well, I won't read them, but Nir, if you were a betting man, which of these answers do you think will be the audience's most popular?
I'm afraid I'll be right because I actually looked for all of them. So I'm gonna give them the chance of maybe even looking it up themselves in the system right now.
We won't bias them then. All right. Give our audience just another second or two. The manually part of this question is maybe what's going to make it really interesting.
Yeah, it's part of the new approach that we're going to present now. So yeah.
Good. Well, let's see where our audience is with what they think should be checked.
Well, okay, that's okay. So let's start with all of our audience. Most of it understand that it's not in the 50 to 150 because if it were there, maybe we wouldn't talk about this today. And I think that most of you guys got it right, like in the, let's say, in the summary of it. So actually the answer is that there are more than 3,000 executable files on the system. And that's a big problem, right? Because it's not something that I want to go over all of them one by one. It would be extremely tedious. It's not like the type of thing that I like to do. But what I do love to do, Pentera and so, is to make an automation. So what it means that I was thinking about utilizing automation as part of the research process. And it would look something like this. So we will try to adjust the manual approach and put it into script. So on the one end of it, we will have the trigger potential downloader script, which basically will go over all of the executable files in a specific directory. And then you will try to trigger it by just running this command line. So the thing that you see in the code itself is actually equivalent to potential downloader or downloader in this example, and then a path to download a file from. And as you can see here, the path to download the file from contains the name of the downloader. In the next slide, I'll explain why. And the next slide actually contains the HTTP server that we talked about earlier. The thing with the HTTP server is that it allows us a feedback, an indication of what actually is going on. So we will start it, and then we will monitor all of the GET requests, all of the requests that try to download something from the server. Now, if you remember, and as you can see here, within the path, there's the name of the potential downloader. And we need it in order to get an indication of what actually triggered this GET request. So if we will parse it, we will have the potential downloader as part of the path. And now we know which one of the files tried to download the file from this server. So we just ran them together. And within just a few hours, we found 6 more new downloaders. It brought us to a total of 9 new downloaders, new ones, which is almost 30% increase in all of the LOLBAS downloaders in the LOLBAS project. Now, by the way, one of them, as you can see here, is config security policy, which is kind of cool because it's part of the Windows Defenders suite. So I like to think about it as you can use something that should defend your system against it. I like this concept. So yeah, anyways, we talked a lot about the download part of this total attack scenario. Let's go on and speak a little bit about the execution part. Now we already download the more robust malware. Now we want to execute it. But before we're going to do that, I want to add a pinch of hyphen, dash, and slash. And what I mean is that if you ever try to execute something from the CLI, from CMD, then you know that there are all sorts of flags you can use. For example, you can use ping with just the IP address, and it will try to ping this IP address. But if you will use ping with -a, for example, it will not only ping it, but it will also try to resolve the address to its host name. So it means that it will change the way that the binary function, it will change the way that the code is running, like in the back end. And by using different flags, we will get different execution path. So I wanted to try and add all sorts of hyphen, dash, and slash with all sorts of ABC letters and try to understand if using them will give me some sort of other indication or other functionalities in those binaries that will be potential executors. So we will do something that is very similar to the downloader part. Here we will go over all of the different potential executors and try to execute them in a way that it will be the potential executor and the file to execute. Now, we will also add all of the hyphen, dash, and slash and the different flags with the ABC letters. But at this point, if you remember, we had this thing with the downloader that we had an indication. We had the HTTP server as a feedback that something really happened. But what would give us an indication about an execution? It's a little bit different. And the way I approach it is by just using the regular process tree in the operating system and to try and figure out who's the parent process that triggered the executable part. So it would look something like this. So if we will try and execute Notepad from the CMD, then you can check using Process Explorer, for example, you can check who is the parent process of Notepad. And you will be able to see that the parent process is CMD. So it's something that is already built in the operating system. A process can know and look up its parent. And that's exactly what we want to do. So actually, I developed this exe helper. And his only job was to understand that if it was executed, it should go and look for its parent and write it to a log file. And just to make something like a little bit more graphic out of it, I want to show you a quick demo where you will be able to see exe helper in action and also see the different hyphen, dash, and slash flags. So we will see in the next video how I run this script, trying to figure out if SFTP is a potential executor. So it will go something like this. On the left side, you will be able to see the script running and executing SFTP with all sorts of different flags. And on the right side, right about now, you will see a log record in, which this log record is been written by exe helper, which helps us to understand who was the parent process that executed it. And now, after running this script for a few hours, we found 3 new executors: SCP, MSOHTM-ED, our beloved one as our first downloader from the Office suite, and SFTP. Now, we wouldn't figure out that SFTP is actually an executor without using these flags, because as you can see in the usage example, using -D, you can use it to give it an SFTP server path. Now, this path is usually used to run the SFTP server if you would like to, but you can use it to run another program that you would like, or a malware in our case. And just by us being a little bit more like into it, and we wanted to understand what exactly happened there, we tried to reverse it using IDA, and we found that really the use of -d will get us to the code branch where there's a use in the Win API call for create process, which of course creates a new process. So it was very interesting to work on this part of the project. We actually found new downloaders and new executors and contribute something back to the community. Now, at this point, we tried to automate this manual approach, but the manual approach was specifically on the dynamic analysis side of things. And dynamic analysis means that we tried to poke something, to trigger something, and look around and check if something happened. Now, that's a good approach for research, but there's another approach for it, which is the static analysis. And now this is something that we're talking about more like in the future aspect of this research, but we already conducted a few POCs of that as well. So in a static analysis flow, we will try to understand without executing anything what happens behind the scenes. So behind the scenes. So we will try to understand how the program is actually working. So in order to do that, we want to reverse the code and then look for relevant API calls. For example, if we would like to find new executors, we would like to find a use of create process API call, for example. But at this point, this is only like the end goal. This is the code branch at the end. We want to understand and reverse our way up to the CLI command, to the main function, and to its arguments. And then we want to understand if there's something from the user input that might affect the way that this program is behaving. So in order to do that, you can see that it looks something like this. So this is like a pseudocode. So we will have run SFTP server, and the argument is path to file. And you can see that create process at the bottom of the screen gets this path. So now we have like this connection that the path to the file was received from the previous function, the one that called run SFTP server. So the previous function in this example will be the main function itself. And here main function will call run SFTP server when it used the flag -d. And it will get all of this data, all of these arguments from the user input, from the CLI command. So it would look something like this, sorry. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, okay. It will look something like this, and that's the process that we want to change from the manual approach and bring it to an automation concept. And the way to do that, we build like a sort of a block diagram, and that's the flow. So first we will look for cross-references of the relevant API call, for example, create process. By the way, in the download aspect, you will try to download a file from URL or something like this. And then we will try to decompile this function to get a better understanding of what really happens there. Now, after the decompilation part, we will try to ask, is this the main function? Because if so, we can just go on and check the arguments and something from the CLI. But if it's not the main function, like we did earlier, we need to try and understand which function called this one, and then try to decompile this function and ask the same question again. And by doing that, sort of reversing our way up in the code branches until we get to the main function. And then we can check if something from the command line really affected anything of it. And if it's something that really like affected the way that the program is being used, and there is something that can trigger create process, then there's a high chance of it being used as an executor. How we might automate it, you might ask. So the first part, you can use IDA Python. IDA is a known reversing tool, and we can use Python script already in its like environment and use its API in order to try and do something there automatically. So we can look for cross-reference of relevant API calls, and we can decompile the functions. I don't know if you ever tried it, but once you try and decompile a function in IDA, then you will receive something that is like not so understandable C code, let's say, or a very misunderstood C code. So it will be fairly difficult to write something that will understand what is going on over there. So instead of doing that, why not just ask ChatGPT, right? So actually we have like a POC of it, trying to figure out or to understand if a certain known LOLbas can be used as an executor, and it worked fairly well. And yeah, so that's the concept. Just ask ChatGPT, utilize all of the AI mechanisms, and try to understand if there is any relationships between different code chunks into the previous function. So that's the approach that we want to take on forward in this future research. By this point, there are a few, let's say, key takeaways that I would like for you to take from all of the things that I talked about. So the first one would be to give the red and blue teamers the tools and knowledge needed to find their unknown LOLbas. They can be proactive about it. Try to find something before the bad guys do, and also try to contribute back to the community in the Great LOLbas project. Other than that, we talked about the automation, the automated approach of using it during your research. Specifically, if you have a wide range of potential target, it will come in handy. And lastly, the LOL isn't so funny when it comes to bite you in the best. Please put a focus on it. Please understand that if there's anything that can stop the next attack, it might just be by putting the focus on the LOLbas attack scenario. Now I have a quick question for you again. Terry, would you like to take that on?
Yeah, sure. Let's ask our audience another poll question. Which of the following binaries is the riskiest LOLbas downloader? I've got my suspicions. I'll keep them to myself. What about you, Nir? You probably know how this goes, but I imagine there's one of these three answers that, well, let's see what our audience comes back with.
I can only say that Certutil is one that has been used in a lot of attack scenarios already. And MSO HTMED, well, I guess you heard about it a little bit today. Outlook, you might figure it out.
Good. Let's see how our audience voted on this one.
Wow, okay. That's an interesting distribution, mainly because, you know what?
Are you surprised by that one?
Yeah, a little bit, mainly because actually I forgot to say that Outlook is one, it was written in one of the slides, but I forgot to say that Outlook is one of the downloaders that we found, and it's currently in a pull request process in the LOLbas project. But
that's what I would have answered.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting, and as you see, MSO HTMED is somewhere in the bottom. So I think that there's a good rationale of it, because Certutil is a very known LOLbas, and I think that Odver even tells us here that it's the most viewed binary on the LOLbas project, which means that a lot of people already know about it. And I think that actually this issue actually shows why I think, like me personally, that it's not so risky, just because there are already security mechanisms and a lot of IOCs that will try and handle this, using the Certutil LOLbas. MSO HTMED, it's a fairly new LOLbas, in the LOLbas project pool, which means that attackers might use it and you might not know about it. So it's somewhere in the middle. And Outlook is it's already out there, right? So we've got it on a pull request, so it's already public, but it's not official yet. So it will be interesting to look at it from this perspective. There's a lot of attack scenarios where actually hackers look at different vulnerabilities that are reported in a pull request somewhere along GitHub, and then use it before it's something official. So on my perspective, I think that Outlook is the riskiest, but I would like to suggest for you something to think about, going a little bit further in this direction. I would like to just give you the notion of the criteria to get accepted as a LOLbas for this LOLbas project. So the main criteria is for the LOLbas file to be part of the Microsoft ecosystem, which means that it might just be Microsoft signed, it was downloaded from Microsoft or native to the OS. But what if I told you that hackers don't really care about any official list? And what if I tell you that their interest is to try and to do their best move against you? So they might think about it a little bit differently, because the LOLbas concept, the living off the land, means that they have sort of a good indication of this tool already being installed in your system. But I think that today, in today's world, hackers can do that with all sorts of stuff. They can do it by assuming that you're using Zoom, right? Or Slack, so you might just have it installed on your system. What about if they know that you're a company that develops programs? So you might just have PyCharm or Visual Studio. What about if you're a, let's say, mechanical engineer? Well, you might just have SolidWorks or something else. And what I mean is that hackers will stay consistent with their concept of trying to do the next move, and you are not, well, you are not aware of it. So I just want to give you something to think about in the future aspect of LOLbas. So yeah, that's it for my part of this session today. I want to thank you, first of all, for listening until this point. And I want to bring up here, oh, I see you already up. Odvar, how are you, man?
Doing good. As soon as I got my microphone turned on. Doing good.
Great, great. It's good to hear. And actually, I have to tell you, you know, it was a huge honor to see you even like shared a tweet about this research. As a former red teamer, I've used a bunch of LOLbas files, and it was great for me and a great honor to like give something back, let's say. And the first thing I want to ask you actually is about this research. Like, what are the key takeaways that you take from this sort of research in the aspect of like the defender side and the attacker side?
So I would say my main takeaways would probably be that you manage to get both perspectives. Like, it's inspirational for me as an attacker to read about your research, but thinking with the blue hat on my head, I'm also thinking that this is super useful if I'm building detections and trying to stay ahead of the attackers. As you mentioned, like in the last slide, that there are actually LOLbas is only like very Microsoft driven, because the project decided to not include every single binary there is from every single vendor. So we had to narrow down the scope. So we decided on Microsoft. That was a good starting point. So I'm pretty sure there's a lot of third-party binaries that still needs to be found. So I love how you kind of inspire research. That's a big takeaway for me. And yeah, I just love how you automated everything. It's really, really cool.
Awesome. Thanks, man. So you know what? Let's try and get back for a moment to square one. So the LOLbas project really changed a lot in the like hacking landscape, and it's been around for a while. How did it all get started?
So this started on Twitter. We had some discussions in the InfoSec community where we constantly found new binaries that did different stuff, and we didn't really have a good name for it. And there were several polls from several people trying to land on a standardized name for such binaries. Trampoline binaries was a name at one point. Grim Sherpas was a name. There was a lot of different funny names, but it never became anything because it was just some people randomly tossing out names, and it never really became anything. So I decided that for it to be a name, we actually need something to kind of connect it to, like have a product or something surrounding the name. And one name that stuck out for me was a LOLBin. And I kind of felt that was like the standard name it should be, living of the land binary. I thought that was kind of cool, LOLBin. So I had collected a lot of notes over the years from all different researchers. So I decided to create a portal where you could basically go in and click on the different binaries, and you can see like details about the binary, how to run it. And also, I think one of the great things, or the key to success, was that we also decided to include, or I decided to include when I started it, to include the acknowledgement for the researchers, so they would get like their name written on the finding. And speaking of that, myself, I mean, from previous experiences, I love when I actually get the recognition when I actually do something cool. So having that mentality, I decided to implement that as well. So that became the LOLBAS project. It started off with simple files, and as time progressed, it got more popular. It got really successful. I got a lot of pull requests. I got a lot of DMs from people finding new stuff. Decided to onboard more people. So first off, I onboarded Jimmy Bain, and then he helped me out, and we kind of onboarded some more people, and we redesigned everything, and it ended up in this shiny, cool-looking portal we have today. And we've onboarded some more people, and they have taken it even further with the MITRE attack things, and yeah, it's a work in progress. But I haven't probably been as much involved the last year as I should have. But I'm really thankful for the other project members that are doing more work. So it's really helpful.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Basically how it started. Yeah.
Pretty amazing how this kind of project take on. Like, when there's like a good community around it, with our community, the security community, then things can like blow up. It's amazing. And so that's how it actually got started. And like my last slide was about sort of thinking a little bit outside of it. And I was interested to hear about how you look at it and what's your perspective of the future of LOLBAS.
I think LOLBAS is kind of set to be what it is for now. I think if somebody third party, I think that should be probably a separate project, or maybe it could be included. I'm not sure. We have discussed this a couple of times with the project members, but we kind of fall back that would be a lot of work. But I mean, nothing's set. In the future, I foresee that I think the majority of new LOLBAS findings will probably be third party and not necessarily Microsoft things. I could, of course, be wrong. And also a new place where I think people might start to look is store apps, Microsoft store apps.
Oh, yeah. So trying to look at it from like sort of supply chain aspect of it. So something that comes away. Yeah.
Also like take for example PSExec, or like the sysinternal tools. Like those are tools you really want to run on a system sometimes. Great binaries, but the problem is if you put them on disk, you are most likely getting detected. But you can install them through the Windows Store and run it that way instead, and sometimes it goes under the radar. So I think maybe for the future there might be store apps that are interesting to look at.
Yeah, that sounds like a cool approach, actually. Yeah, that's why I always think of it as hackers trying to do the best to stay under the radar. And that's why we as a security community, like on the good side, let's say, we want to be proactive at it and try to find this all sorts of niche together before they do. So I like this idea a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thanks, Oliver, again.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sure. I think it's a good time for the Q&A session now. So maybe I'm gonna hand it back to Terry now.
Thanks, Nir and Oddvar. A great perspective from you both on the upsides and down of otherwise ordinary binaries. Thank you both for the comments and really setting the stage for the conversation today. We do have a few questions, but before we dive into those, just a few quick reminders. PDF copy, of course, of today's presentation can be found in that resources box on your console. We also ask you to fill out that feedback form, which will open on the computer. Thanks again. Your feedback really does help us improve on future events. Let's get right to the questions then. Odvar, this first one is for you. How many people are working on and moderating the LOLBAS project? Can you tell us a bit about the resources that are being brought to bear there?
Absolutely. So currently now we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We are 7 people involved in the LOLBAS project, where we have, I would say everybody kind of does a little bit, but there are certainly new members that are doing more than the older members for some reason. But we are currently, it's myself, it's a guy called Jimmy Bain, Bohops on Twitter, Connor Richard, his Twitter handle is CNOSCR, and we have Chris Span, Conscious Hacker. We have a guy called Liam Wietze. He's a big contributor in the project. He has driven a lot of the new stuff that we recently have released. And also Jose Hernandez. Jose helps on Twitter. He's also involved in the LOL drivers project, which is a project more related to drivers and exploitation of those.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Another question for you, Odvar. Are there any other similar projects to LOLBAS and any other efforts underway that are trying to come at the same issue?
There's actually a whole lot. I actually don't have a full overview at the moment, but you have GTFO bins. That's another project that started a little after the LOLBAS project, but it focuses on Linux binaries instead. You also have the LOTS project, which focuses more on like sites you can abuse for. I mean, the short is living of trusted sites. I think like you abuse sites such as you can use Gmail for exfiltration or C2 and Azure Edge for C2 traffic. He have mapped out a lot of the different sites or cloud services out there. We also have the LOL drivers, as I mentioned already, focuses mainly on driver vulnerability in Windows. And there's also a project for Macintosh. I can't actually remember the name right now. Collection of sites. I think there's a site called LOL Farm or something after a lot of releases of new tools. So there's certainly a whole lot. I'll make sure to tweet out a list of everything after this talk so everybody is up to date with all the different tools, because there's a lot of sites these days.
Yeah, that would be great. A question from our audience asking if there's any effort underway that looking at binaries of macOS. I think they might mean macros, but maybe not.
Oh, probably Mac OS, I'm assuming.
Oh,
like
Mac
the
OS,
Macintosh operating system. Yeah. So there is a separate project for that. I can't actually remember the site name. I'm really embarrassed now, but I will make sure to tweet it out afterwards. So just go to my Twitter and you will see it after the talk. I just need to find it. But there's certainly somebody who started the Mac OS mapping for some binaries, and there's already a decent amount of stuff in there.
Thank you, Odvar. Nir, let's bring you back into it. Is it possible to use the same automation techniques to find LOLBAS with other functionalities?
So we talked a lot about like the different functionalities, and we put a focus on the download and execute parts. But actually, anything that you can model out, like the sort of the triggering of it, and then try to understand and to get a feedback out of it, then you can find. So let's say, for example, so you can look at the upload part, by the way. So it's fairly similar to the download. So if you will have something like an HTTP server, and you will try to trigger the potential uploader by executing, going over all of the exe files, and then give it sort of 2 arguments. So one of them would be the file that you want to upload, and the other one would be the path that you want, like the URL that you want to upload the file to. So that will be like good because you already know like the concept of having the indication from an HTTP server or even an FTP server. By the way, you can use the same concept of it with the copy functionalities. So you can try and copy a file from one folder to another one, and just by using like the potential copier, let's say, path A, path B, and then put something that will monitor the destination. So basically, as long as you can sort of close this circle, let's say, the one that triggers it and the one that gives you a feedback about it, then yeah, you can find all sorts of interesting things.
Right.
Yeah.
Nir, is there anything our audience members can do to better defend themselves against unknown LOLBAS files?
Yeah, so first of all, as we talked about today, I suggest you to be proactive, right? To try and find new ones. And of course, by the way, go over all of the list, try to understand there's a lot of like IOC's indications within the LOLBAS project itself. So you might just put an effort and use them again. And yeah, other than that, there are all sorts of security mechanisms that you can use. So for example, if we would look at it from like a general perspective, there are a lot of tools that you won't need to allow to be executed from the CMD or the command line, right? So no one really tries to execute Excel using CMD and typing excel.exe, enter. So you might just try and block this sort of like execution flow. And yeah, I would certainly try to find different things that are common between different LOLBAS files. And by doing that, you might not only block them, but all of the concept of executing them. So, yeah.
Excellent. Nir, another question for you concerning the automation of dynamic analysis. Any next steps? Anything happening on the horizon that we should know about?
On the dynamic analysis, yes. So actually, I had like a good idea that I didn't have the chance to pursue, but I was thinking about it from like the vulnerability research perspective. So in vulnerability research, we always try to find a way for the user input to somehow affect it. So you might have like some sort of a server. So you have an input from the network side of it. You might have something from a named pipe or whatever. So here, you might look at the binaries with different inputs to it. So it might be through a CLI interface, like a command line interface, but it might be through something like an environment variable where you can put something that will affect the way it's being executed, or even like a registry key that is somehow involved in this process. So I think that there are a lot of ways to go on with it.
Excellent. Nir, another question from our audience is there any possibility of DLL files being used alongside LOLBAS files?
Yeah, so if I understand the question correctly, and Odvar, you can join, of course, part of the LOLBAS or the bus is the binaries and scripts, but I think that there are also like interesting DLLs as part of this pool. And yeah, because sometimes you can like invoke some function from a DLL and use it like in a whole attack scenario.
Good stuff. That is going to bring us to the end of our Q&A today. I want to thank both Nir Chako of Pentera and Odvar Mo of Trusted Sec and the LOLBAS open source project for their insights and expertise. Gentlemen, thank you both for your time and insights today. Really, really appreciate you being here on this Black Hat webinar. I also want to thank our audience for attending today's webinar, LOLBAS Odyssey, tracing the path of finding hidden gems and executables, brought to you by Black Hat, Google, and Informa. Excuse me, Black Hat, Pentera, and Informa. We'll be sending you an email with a link to access this presentation on demand. Please feel free to share it with colleagues who could not be part of today's live presentation. On behalf of our guest experts, as well as our sponsor, Pentera, thanks for attending today. This has been Terry Sweeney for Black Hat. We'll see you next time.